Many of the names that have made the British motor industry great have long since fallen by the wayside. Vauxhall, however, stands unique in spanning the quantum changes of a century of car production. From the first car built in 1903 to the innovative models of the 90s, the Vauxhall name has adorned all kinds of motor vehicles, from record-breaking sports cars to spacious family cars, from military vehicles to luxury coach-built limousines. To the hundreds and thousands of motorists who have driven these machines, the name means one thing: that this is a vehicle built to the highest engineering standards, which will give years of reliable and enjoyable motoring. It's 1903, and the arrival of the motor car on the roads of Britain epitomises turn-of-the-century optimism. In South London, the Vauxhall Ironworks Company, under the directorship of Messrs. F.W. Hodges and J.H. Chambers, is about to make its automotive debut. With a background in marine technology, few could have predicted this was truly a motoring landmark. The first car to carry the distinctive Griffin emblem was a one-cylinder, 5-horsepower two-seater, very much the horseless carriage. It went on sale for the princely sum of £136. One happy customer of the day reflects the reliability and inexpensive running costs. 9th of September 1904. With reference to the automobile, which I purchased on the 25th of April last, I should like you to know that I am more than delighted with its performance. The wear and tear driving at 15 miles an hour is, in my opinion, almost negligible. The average cost of running daily has worked out 1/3 that of the upkeep of my horse. An inexpensive, reliable and comfortable means of locomotion, say I. The next few years saw two historic developments. First was the relocation to a new factory site in Luton in 1905. Then in 1907 came the decision to establish car production under a new company name, Vauxhall Motors Limited. Vauxhall was quick to spot the association between sporting success and sales, and increasingly entered their cars in high-profile racing competitions. The A-Type and B-Type, both designed by their hot young engineer Lawrence Pomeroy, became respectively the first 20-horsepower car to exceed 100 miles an hour and the winner of 4 world speed records. Then in 1911 came the launch of the Prince Henry, popularly acknowledged as the first true sports car from a British manufacturer. By 1912, output at the Luton factory was up to 300 cars a year, and international competition had already opened up export markets, including Russia. As war closed in, Vauxhall's production focused on the D-Type Tourer, which became the standard staff car of the British Army, with nearly 2,000 built under government contract. At the other end of the spectrum, Pomeroy had designed the instant classic sports car, the E-Type, or 3098, in 1913. In short supply as production concentrated on the war effort, in the post-war period, its time would come. After the austerity of the First World War, came the flamboyancy of the 20s. A dashing sports car was the epitome of a glamorous lifestyle. As the 20s roared to the tune of the Charleston, the Vauxhall 3098 became one of the great sporting cars of its day. The motoring boom soon had the middle classes clamouring for affordable and reliable motor cars. And to meet this demand, Vauxhall launched its first popular car in 1922, the M-Type. At £650 and offering 55 miles an hour and 30 miles per gallon, it was aimed fairly and squarely at the ordinary non-sporting driver. Despite the M-Type, Vauxhall remained a niche manufacturer, building cars mainly for the prestige end of the market. Then, in 1925, Vauxhall was bought by General Motors. This alliance would give Vauxhall the financial muscle to build cars for all kinds of customers, and the 30s would bear witness to the success of this strategy. The first all-new product of the merger was the Vauxhall Cadet. At an affordable £280, the Cadet was the first British car to feature a synchromesh gearbox. The light and big sixes followed with a starting price under £200. Small wonder that between 1933 and 1934, production at the Luton factory doubled to 20,000. General Motors' backing also allowed Vauxhall to enter the commercial vehicle market with the Bedford range in 1931. The lightweight construction and low price made the trucks instantly popular, not only in the UK, but throughout the Commonwealth and beyond. There was time for one more major innovation before the onset of war, and that was the introduction of the integral construction principle. Investing £1 million, Vauxhall became the first British manufacturer to build a car without a separate chassis. At once lighter and cheaper to build, 10,000 Vauxhall 10s were sold before the war. The onset of war brought with it a very different set of demands. Car production effectively ground to a halt as the Luton plant produced steel helmets, ammunition, and worked on the development of aircraft jet engines. Bedford also played a crucial role in the war effort, building nearly 250,000 vehicles for the British Army. In 1940, with invasion imminent, the British Army had less than 100 tanks available. Vauxhall was charged with the task of designing and producing a new fleet. Within 1 year, the first 38-ton Churchill tank was rolling off the production line. By the end of the war, 5,640 tanks had been built. Vauxhall's contribution to the war effort led inevitably to it becoming a target for enemy bombing. In August 1940, 39 employees were killed in a raid on the Luton factory. Vauxhall's car production resumed after the war with the pre-war lineup. Few could have anticipated the motoring boom that was just around the corner. The early 50s were heady times, with the Festival of Britain, the coronation, and Edmund Hillary's conquest of Everest in consecutive years. New stylish cars whose design looked to the future marked the end of austerity and rationing. The Vauxhall E-Type of 1951 boasted curved windscreens and all-enveloping bodywork, appealing to the style-conscious customer. By 1953, as Vauxhall Motors celebrated its Golden Jubilee, it had established itself as a truly world-class motor manufacturer. The Luton plant now covered 80 acres and employed 13,000 people. Annual output exceeded 100,000 for the first time, and the millionth vehicle rolled off the production line.
Whoa there, children. What's all the hurry? Ah, I see. It's an exciting moment when Pop arrives home with his new Vauxhall Cresta. Smashing, isn't it? Plenty of room inside. Big windows to see out of. Room enough in the boot for a bunch of stowaways. Gosh, what an engine. 2¼ litres in there, Jimmy. Lots of zip, long life, and light on petrol, too. Plus, of course, the go-anywhere, climb-anything, top gear performance that makes driving a treat. This is a car that pleases the whole family. If you want 4-figure engineering at a 3-figure price, see your Vauxhall dealer.
But all this was still not enough to satisfy an automobile-hungry public. The next year would see a further investment of £36 million in a brand new production building. The first Victor appeared in 1956 and within a year had sold 100,000 units and had become Britain's #1 export model. As the 50s progressed, popular culture began to influence the way cars looked. As rock and roll swept in from America, so Vauxhall cars began to adopt transatlantic style cues. The 1957 big Velox and Cresta models boasted finned bodywork, bags of chrome, bench seats and aero-influenced dashboards.
This is the new Vauxhall Victor, and my idea of everything a car should be.
The 60s were something of a motoring heyday, and Vauxhall was certainly riding the wave of an affluent post-war generation demanding mobility and independence. The second edition FB Victor was selling well, with nearly 330,000 customers in a 4-year production run. Available in standard, super, deluxe and estate car models, the FB Victor offered the kind of choice that an ever more sophisticated market demanded. 1961 saw the beginning of construction at the Ellesmere Port car plant on Merseyside, where production started in 1964. The two-door saloon Viva marked Vauxhall's return to the small family car market. Its clean line saw the end of American-influenced design and the arrival of swinging 60s style. The Viva truly became a car for the decade, and the new for 66 model was the one that really captured the public's imagination. With England as World Cup champions, the Beatles changing popular music forever, and London the centre of the world fashion scene, the Viva was the right car at the right time. With 26 models to choose from, the Vauxhall Viva range gained a bigger share of the UK car market than any previous Vauxhall, and by 1970 well over 500,000 had been sold. The Victor, Cresta and Viscount of the mid-60s were in turn practical, spacious and luxurious saloons, but it was the FD Victor that was the real scene stealer. The star of the 1967 Motor Show, the FD Victor was voted the Sunday Times Car of the Year, its styling, new engines and safety features receiving particular acclaim. In top-of-the-range Ventura form, it was a powerful and exclusive executive car. The 70s would see the end of the Viva and Victor family lines. In 1971, the millionth Viva rolled off the production line at Ellesmere Port, whilst the FE Victor soldiered on until 1978, when it was replaced by the all-new Carlton.
Before the early rains came, the intrepid Smith family set off on safari in their new Vauxhall Viva. Stores were quickly loaded, and the eager hunters comfortably seated. With father at the wheel, the car moved swiftly through the hinterland. They soon encountered some difficult terrain, which the Viva, with its protective undersealing and unique 11-stage anti-rust treatment, took in its stride. The Viva's all-round safety and immensely strong body structure gave them a feeling of security as Mrs. Smith shot her first lion. Keeping cool with the aid of the through-flow ventilation, Katie delivered a well-aimed shot and bagged a rogue elephant. Even the speed and grace of the cheetahs were no match for the lively Viva, and they were soon safely back at base. On safari Sundays and every day of the week, the Viva is a joy to drive.
However, the most significant new models of the 70s didn't arrive until the middle of the decade, with the launch of the Chevette and Cavalier. Both cars quickly entered the UK top 10 sales league and ensured that Vauxhall, with continued investment from General Motors, performed strongly despite the ailing economy. The 70s also saw a return to competition success as powerful Chevettes and Forenzas set the pace on European race circuits. One particularly awesome Ventura took no prisoners, and victory for the 16-valve Chevette in the British Open Rally Championships gave Vauxhall an extra special 75th anniversary celebration at the end of the decade. The 80s saw greater integration with Opel, Vauxhall's sister company in Germany, and the shaping of the range of Vauxhall cars that we are familiar with today. First out of the blocks at the turn of the decade was the new Astra, Vauxhall's first front-wheel drive model. The second generation model followed 4 years later, built on the new robotized lines at Ellesmere Port. Available in 17 different models to start with, the Bellman Saloon and stylish convertible would follow later in the decade. Meanwhile, the groundbreaking Cavalier was going from strength to strength. The front-wheel drive Mark II arrived in 1981 and became central to Vauxhall's success in the 80s. Vauxhall took its first step into the small car market in 1983 with the Nova. The nippy small car became a key player in the 80s hatchback scene. At the other end of the market, the new Carlton and flagship Senator were launched in consecutive years in 86 and 87. Indeed, 1987 turned out to be an important year. The Carlton was voted European Car of the Year. Luton's £90 million paint shop was opened, and Thorn EMI placed the biggest single fleet order for Vauxhall cars ever, a massive 20,000 cars. On a different note, the late 80s marked the end of an era for Bedford, as Vauxhall sold its commercial vehicle division. The 90s saw the return of truly exciting cars to meet customers' varied and more leisure-orientated lifestyles, and Vauxhall was immediately setting the pace. The Calibra upped the stakes in the coupe market, offering performance to match its looks. It was the world's most aerodynamically efficient production car. The Frontera followed a year later in 1991, Vauxhall's first four-wheel drive vehicle. This was a sector that was to witness dramatic growth in the 90s. The Mark III Astra was introduced in 1992 and became the most successful new model launch in Vauxhall's history. These were busy and exciting times for Vauxhall, and the arrival of the Corsa reflected the confidence of the company. The Corsa brought fresh chic and styling to the small car market. The emphasis has not just been on new models. The 90s have seen innovation of many other aspects of Vauxhall's cars. In 1992, as part of its environmental commitment, Vauxhall became the first UK manufacturer to provide catalytic converters as standard across its whole range. And by 1993, the important new Ecotec engines complying with the toughest EC emission standards were appearing. Most Vauxhalls are now fitted with these engines, the most environmentally efficient in Europe. Vauxhall has also launched a range of dual-fuel cars and vans, vehicles that can run on petrol but switch to cleaner gas to reduce exhaust emissions in urban areas. And as the quest for alternative and sustainable fuels continues, Vauxhall, Opel and General Motors are pioneering developments in fuel cell technology. Reducing carbon dioxide emissions by half and producing virtually no pollutants, the fuel cell propulsion system is most likely to overtake petrol and diesel engines as the standard for passenger cars of the future. The Vauxhall range of the 90s is also one of the safest and most secure in the world. As motorists have become increasingly concerned with these issues, so Vauxhall has responded by providing high levels of safety and security as standard. And so the second half of the 90s has seen the introduction of more new Vauxhalls meeting modern lifestyles and demanding motoring conditions. The Tigra proved that some concept cars do make it into production. The Amiga achieved market leadership within months of its launch. The Sintra marked Vauxhall's entry into the people mover market. The launch of the versatile Movano van completes Vauxhall's range of light commercial vehicles. The Vectra continues to top the sales charts after nearly 4 years in production. And by raising the standard for ordinary motorists, the innovative new Astra is truly a car for the future. And indeed, what does the next century hold for Vauxhall? As part of General Motors, Vauxhall will certainly always be at the leading edge of motoring innovation. Production and manufacturing techniques will become ever more sophisticated and efficient. This will mean that Vauxhall customers will get even better cars delivering excellent performance and value for money, and that they will continue to enjoy unparalleled levels of customer care and service. And in 2003, as Vauxhall celebrates 100 years of motor manufacture, it will be able to look back with pride on a journey that has taken it a very long way from that Victorian ironworks in South London.
Vauxhall, raising the standard.